You're watching Forsaken Joe. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy the story. Let's begin. There were 2 mugs on the patio table. That was the first thing wrong. Not the sound, not the door I didn't remember unlocking, just the second mug. Mine had the chipped rim. Hers said, "Don't even speak." But this one? It was plain, beige. Like it wanted to disappear. Steam was still curling off the top. I didn't move. I didn't breathe loud. I just stood behind the curtain and watched the robe. She was wearing the robe. The one with the torn belt loop and the small wine stain near the hem she always blamed on me. She sat down in the patio chair like nothing was strange. Like it was any other Saturday morning. Like I wasn't watching from the hallway where she'd left the light off, where my own slippers were still damp from the grass. And then she laughed. Quiet, natural, unforced, but not for herself. Never for herself. He spoke. I couldn't hear him. I only saw his hand reach out and pull the second mug closer. Not tentative, not curious, familiar. My head felt like a drawer you can't close all the way, jammed and useless. I had taken out the trash. That's all I did. I had taken out the trash and come back, and the lock clicked behind me like a cough someone pretends isn't real. I wasn't supposed to see this. She wasn't supposed to come outside like that, and he, whoever he was, wasn't supposed to already know which mug was his. I didn't even notice I was barefoot until I stepped back and something crunched beneath me. A cat toy, Mr. Fiddles' favorite one. The one Clara said she threw away weeks ago because it reeked of tuna. But it was right there, behind the curtain, like someone had tossed it aside in a hurry. And then the back door opened again. Not all the way, just a creak, a shift in light. And she said something. Something low. Software. But it wasn't his name. It was mine. As if she just remembered I existed. And that's when I realized something much worse than betrayal. She hadn't forgotten me. She just didn't expect me to still be here. I didn't move for a full minute after she said my name. Not because I was frozen in fear or heartbreak or whatever movies pretend it feels like. No, I was calculating. Not smart calculations, just quiet, pathetic little thoughts. Like, did she hear me breathe? Did she notice the curtain move? Can she see my shadow on the wall behind me? Her voice didn't sound scared when she said it. That's what ate at me first. It sounded inconvenient, like someone remembering they left the oven on after they already got in the car. She didn't say it again. No footsteps, no rush to check, no urgency. She just stepped back inside and slid the glass door closed behind her. Not locked, just slid shut like she was trying not to wake someone. I waited, listened. There was only silence now, except for the little hiss from the kettle I'd started before I stepped out. I had been outside for exactly 8 minutes. I know because the bathroom light was still on upstairs, and that stupid motion sensor we never fixed was still blinking red on the porch. 8 minutes? That's all it took for my house to stop feeling like my house. When I finally stepped onto the patio, the first thing I noticed was the smell. Cologne. Something citrusy and too expensive for anyone we knew. It wasn't mine. Clara always said my aftershave smelled like gym teacher with debt. I picked up the plain mug. It was heavier than ours, unfamiliar, restaurant weight, no brand underneath. I don't even know why that bothered me. It was just a mug. But it was his. Inside the house, the hallway was too quiet. The bathroom door upstairs was now open, lights off. Mr. Fiddles sat in the middle of the stairs, tail flicking. He wasn't supposed to be out of the bedroom before breakfast. And then I heard it. Not a voice, not a footstep. A sound like fabric being pulled. Slow, deliberate, coming from the guest room. We never use the guest room. We tell people it's for visitors, but really it's just where old books and mismatched socks go to die. Clara keeps the door shut because dust creeps like guilt. Her words, not mine. But now it was cracked open. Just a sliver. I stood there for too long again. Not like a man planning anything, more like a scarecrow left behind after the harvest. I reached for the doorknob, hands sweating, stomach doing that horrible slow flip like I'd swallowed a stone. Inside, it was dim, curtains drawn. The air smelled faintly of her vanilla lotion, but sharper, more artificial. As if someone tried to cover something up and overdid it. The bedspread was rumpled. A sock was tucked between the headboard and pillow. Not hers, definitely not mine. And on the nightstand, a second phone, not hers, not mine, still unlocked. still warm and on the screen. A paused video of me standing outside, just standing, watching. I didn't touch the phone right away. I just stared at the screen, unable to breathe. There I was, hunched in the cold on the back porch, framed like a wildlife documentary, an animal who didn't yet know it had wandered into a trap. The video was paused mid-frame. I looked small, embarrassed. Like I had caught myself doing something shameful. But the thing that chilled me most wasn't the image. It was the timestamp. It had been recorded 22 minutes ago. That meant it was recorded before I knocked, before I walked around to the back, before I even saw the second mug. That meant someone already knew I was out there. Someone was watching me before I even knew something was wrong. I tapped the screen. The video resumed. It was only about 45 seconds long. No shaky hands, no sneaky movements. It had been recorded cleanly, steadily. From inside the guest room window, right through the curtain gap, my back was to the house. The camera didn't wobble. It followed me precisely. And then it just stopped. No dramatic ending, no reveal, just silence. My heart was kicking like a trapped rabbit. I looked around the room again, slowly this time. The bed, the floor, the corners. My eyes landed on the closet door. It was cracked an inch. And I swear, I saw something shift behind the slats. The faintest sway, like breath disturbing a hanging jacket. I didn't speak. I didn't reach for the knob. I just slowly backed out of the room, dragging the guest phone with me. Once I was in the hallway, I did what any grown, rational adult would do. I locked myself in the bathroom. The door clicked behind me, and I leaned against it, chest heaving like I'd run 5 miles through fog. The phone in my hand buzzed. A new notification. One new message from unknown contact. Message, you should have stayed asleep. I dropped it. Not dramatically. It slipped stupidly out of my fingers and landed by the plunger like an overcooked shrimp. I scrambled to pick it up, wiping my hand on my pajama leg as if I could somehow erase what I'd seen. Then came footsteps. Not from downstairs, from the attic. I forgot we even had an attic. It's one of those shallow crawlspace types, with a pull-down ladder in the hallway that creaks like it's begging for retirement. Clara once called it a graveyard for Christmas junk and shame. We hadn't opened it since we moved in, but now it groaned, just a little, like someone shifting their weight above the ceiling tiles, directly above me. I backed into the bathtub. The porcelain was cold. My mouth tasted like old metal. I stared at the ceiling and waited for something to fall through. A shoe, a hand, a whole damn truth. But nothing happened. Just one more buzz from the phone. Message 2/2. Let's not make this harder than it has to be, Milton. They knew my name. They knew where I'd be. They knew I was alone in this house. And they also knew I wasn't. I must have stayed in that bathtub for 10 minutes, maybe more. The drain made this tiny ticking sound every few seconds, like a heartbeat that didn't belong to anyone. The phone was still in my lap, the second message glowing at me like a dare. Let's not make this harder than it has to be, Milton. I kept rereading it like there was a code hidden in the way the period hit the end, but there wasn't. Just words. Calm, deliberate, impossible words from someone who knew my name and what I'd do next. Eventually, I stood up, not because I had a plan, but because my legs had gone numb and my back was cramping, and I was starting to feel like a scared little kid in a grown man's costume. I cracked the bathroom door and peeked out. Quiet. Too quiet for a house that should have had the TV murmuring in the background, or a microwave beeping, or Clara singing off-key in the kitchen. The air had gone stale. I moved slowly down the hallway. Not heroic slow, just the kind where you want every board to stay silent because your body is trying to pretend you're not really there. I stopped under the attic hatch. The pull cord was swinging, not fast. Just a lazy sway like it had been tugged once, recently, by something that wasn't in a hurry. Now, here's the part I wish I could lie about. I pulled it down. Yeah, I know. Every voice in my head was screaming not to. But something about the silence, the phone, the mug, her robe, it had all twisted into this unbearable pressure that needed a hole poked in it. I wasn't looking for closure. I was looking for proof, for something I could hold in my hand and say, "See, this is why I feel insane." The ladder came down with that same dry groan. Dust spiraled from above, catching the light like snow made of skin cells and secrets. I climbed up 3 steps, just enough to poke my head inside. It wasn't empty. First, I saw boxes, normal stuff, old lamps, holiday bins, a sad tangle of fairy lights. But then I saw something that didn't belong. A mattress. Not rolled, not folded. Just flat in the far corner, with a blanket still rumpled like someone had just been sleeping there. And next to it, a little red light, blinking. I pulled myself up fully. The blinking came from a camera, small, discreet. One of those motion-activated kinds you buy when you want to spy on your dog while you're at work. Except this one wasn't pointed at the attic. It was pointed down, through a small gap in the insulation, directly over the bedroom, our bedroom. I couldn't breathe. My hands started shaking, and my first thought wasn't even, who put this here? It was, how long has it been recording? And that's when I heard the hatch close. The ladder yanked up behind me, fast and violent, and slammed shut with a finality that nearly stopped my heart. I scrambled to the opening, pounding on the wood, shouting Clara's name like I expected her to answer. Nothing. Just the soft shuffle of feet below me, moving away. Then came a voice, not loud, almost casual. You weren't supposed to see this part, Milton. I froze. That voice wasn't Clara's. It wasn't deep or rough. It was smooth. Familiar in a way that made my skin crawl, but I couldn't place it. The footsteps retreated. The hallway grew distant. The camera beside me blinked twice, then went dark. And I was alone. Or maybe not. Because just beyond the mattress, in the farthest part of the attic, where the insulation sagged and the beams turned black with dust, something moved. Not fast, not loud, but enough for me to see that I wasn't the first one to find the camera. And I probably wouldn't be the last. I didn't move for a long time after I saw it shift in the dark. You know that awful stillness when your body wants to scream, but your brain convinces you that staying absolutely quiet is the only thing keeping you alive? That's where I was. Kneeling on itchy insulation, one foot already blistering from the exposed nail I didn't see, and my eyes locked on a black gap between 2 beams, where something had moved just enough to be real, but not enough to be understood. I don't know how long we stared at each other, me, motionless, trying not to blink. It, whatever it was, hunched just out of full view, like it knew exactly where the light from the air vent stopped. I could see an elbow, or maybe a knee, pale, bare, thin like someone who'd lived on soup and shadows. It didn't twitch, it didn't flinch, it just watched me watching it, and then, slowly, with a grace that made my stomach curdle, it raised one finger to its lips. Shh. I didn't scream. I wish I had. I wish I had made any sound at all, but my body betrayed me. I backed away in silence, dragging one foot behind me like a dog caught in a trap, knocking over a box filled with photo albums that spilled across the attic floor like memories thrown in reverse. The sound made it flinch. Not much. Just enough to make me see the side of its face as it twisted toward the disturbance. And I swear on whatever's left of my dignity, it looked like me. Not exactly me, not like a twin, but enough. The bone structure, the jawline, the little crease under the right eye I got when I fell off my bike at 12. It was like someone had tried to redraw me from memory and got just close enough to be horrifying. I slammed into the hatch and pounded, no response. I braced my shoulder, ready to force it open. And then the thing behind me whispered, not out loud, but directly into the space between my ears. She's not coming, Milton. She's not yours anymore. That was it. I lost it. I crashed my shoulder into the hatch 3 times, screaming, kicking, not caring if I dislocated something. The third hit finally cracked the latch, and the door swung down violently, sending the ladder down with a sound like a rifle shot. I fell through it, literally dropped to the hallway floor, hit my elbow on the coat rack, and scrambled backward on all 4s like a crab in a panic attack. The hallway was empty. Nothing but the ticking of the old clock Clara had inherited from her grandmother, the one she always said made her feel safe. I looked up at the attic hatch, still open. Nothing followed me, yet. I ran downstairs, not a jog, not a careful descent. I ran, skipped 2 steps, landed sideways, nearly rolled my ankle. I had to get out, just out. I didn't care where, I didn't care how. I just needed oxygen, daylight, and at least 40 feet of distance between me and whatever version of myself had taken up residence above the ceiling. But the front door was gone, not just locked, gone. like someone had papered over it with the same floral wallpaper we'd been meaning to replace since March. No knob, no hinges, no seam, just a continuous wall where a door used to be. I turned around, heart stuttering like a cheap engine. The living room window, bricked over. The kitchen door, a cabinet now. I checked the patio door, the one I'd watched her walk through that morning. It wasn't there, just more wall, perfect, smooth, like no exit had ever existed. I stumbled back against the kitchen island, hands shaking, and saw my reflection in the microwave door. My face, but not my expression. The man in the microwave was smiling. I didn't know where to look anymore. Every wall had become a trap, every surface a trick. I kept touching things, walls, drawers, outlets, like I could rub the reality back into them. The light switches worked, but nothing turned on. The fridge was cold, but the food inside had no labels, no brands, just rows of identical plastic containers filled with beige, flavorless paste. I opened one and sniffed. It smelled like dust, not spoiled, not food, just dust. Manufactured emptiness, like someone had rebuilt my life from a vague description and missed every detail that made it mine. Then I saw Clara, not in person, in the hallway mirror. It was the only mirror left in the house. Everything else reflective. TV screen, kettle, even the bathroom faucet, was gone or smeared over like someone had been wiping away fingerprints that weren't theirs. But this hallway mirror, the long one she used to check her heels before date nights, stood untouched. It shimmered faintly, humming almost, like it had been waiting for me. She stood there, her reflection. She was wearing the same robe from that morning, tied too tight at the waist like she was holding herself together. But her face was different, pale, unfocused. Her eyes were too wide, like she'd been awake for days but hadn't blinked. And she didn't move like she normally did. She glided, like her feet weren't touching the floor. I took a step toward the mirror. She tilted her head, but her lips didn't move. Her hands stayed by her sides. That's when I noticed her reflection wasn't copying me. I raised my hand. She didn't. I stepped to the left. She stood still, like she wasn't meant to mimic, like she wasn't really me looking back at her. Finally, her lips parted. Not enough to speak, just enough to breathe a word I couldn't hear, like it was being spoken through water. I leaned in. She mouthed it again. Basement. Then she raised one finger, slowly, and pointed. Not at me, but over my shoulder. I spun around, heart thudding against my ribs, and saw something that shouldn't have been there. The door to the basement. The one I was sure didn't exist in this house. We don't have a basement. The blueprints didn't show one. The inspector never mentioned one. It was a running joke between me and Clara that I was jealous of houses with root cellars because I secretly wanted a horror movie experience without the consequences. But now, there it was. Right where the hallway used to end, black iron hinges, a brass knob that looked too cold for this house, and above it, in neat block letters carved directly into the wood, entry permitted only with consent. I didn't touch it. Not yet. Instead, I turned back to the mirror. Clara was gone. In her place was a man, not the attic one, not the hoodie stranger from the patio, someone older, sharper. He wore a blazer over a turtleneck, like he'd come straight from a funeral or an art gallery. His expression was calm, too calm, and he tapped the glass once with a long, bony finger. Then he leaned forward and whispered. But this time, I heard it. I heard it clearly. You're being curated, Milton. Then he smiled, winked, and vanished into the mirror like steam off a blade. And behind me, the basement door creaked open, just enough to let something start breathing. The breath coming from behind the door wasn't human. It wasn't growling or gasping or theatrical. It was measured, like someone trying to control their breathing on purpose, precisely paced, too calm for how long they'd been waiting. That was the part that chilled me most. I don't know what I expected to hear, scratching, screaming, chains. But this was worse, because it sounded like someone patient, like they'd known I'd eventually come down. Like this had all been paced out long before I caught on. I stared at the sign again. Entry permitted only with consent. That word, consent, carried weight I didn't like. I hadn't agreed to anything, had I? Not directly. But then again, I married Clara. I signed a mortgage. I let her install that smart speaker system I always thought was creepy, and I hadn't read the fine print on anything. Maybe I'd consented 100 different times and just didn't realize I was giving away pieces of myself every time I nodded and said, "Sure, babe, whatever you think's best." I pushed the door. It swung open without resistance. No creak. No dramatic draft. Just the hush of air changing shape as it made room for me. The stairs weren't wood or concrete. They were carpeted. Software beige. The kind of carpet people use in hotel corridors. At the bottom, there was light. Warm, amber, almost cozy. And sound. Muffled, glitchy music. Not from speakers, from a piano, out of tune, off rhythm. Like someone was trying to remember a song they had only heard once in a dream. I descended. The moment my foot hit the last stair, the door shut behind me. But it didn't slam. It closed gently, thoughtfully, like someone was making sure I wouldn't be startled. I was in a long hallway now, lined with framed photos. Not digital, not stock. Real photos, printed, glossy, black and white, and they were all of me. Not the versions I recognized from our wedding or vacations, but moments I never knew were captured. Me tying my shoe in the garage, me crying in the car after my first layoff, me picking at a scab in the mirror when I thought no one was home. Intimate, unflattering, private. Each frame had a date etched into the glass. Some were from before I met Clara, some from before I even moved to this city. One was labeled May 12th, 1998, and showed me sitting alone in my childhood bedroom, except I remember that day. That was the day I found out my goldfish died, and no one told me until bedtime. And somehow, someone had taken a picture. I walked faster. At the end of the hallway, there was a room, no door, just an open arch. Inside, the piano played itself, tapping out a slow, broken lullaby. The walls were covered in screens, every wall floor to ceiling, each screen displaying a different angle of my life. Some were live, some were looping old footage. One showed me opening the fridge last Thursday and sighing because I thought Clara ate the last slice of pie. Another showed me standing in this exact hallway, staring into this exact room. But I hadn't even reached it yet. In the middle of the room, on a velvet chair, sat Clara. She looked different, not just tired, used, like she'd been poured into the shape of herself, but not given time to settle. Her eyes flicked up when she saw me, but she didn't smile. She didn't speak. She just said, "They told me you'd never come down, that you weren't elastic enough." I didn't understand. I told her that. I told her to explain what was happening, who was watching us, why our house was a funhouse trap filled with memories I never agreed to make. She just shook her head, slowly, with pity. "You think this is about love?" she said. "This isn't even about you anymore. You're the lens, Milton, not the subject." I laughed, not because it was funny, because that was the only sound I could make that didn't come out as a scream. Then someone behind me said, "He's almost ready." I turned around. It was the man from the mirror, but this time, he was wearing my face. He stepped forward, this version of me, wearing my face but better. Cleaner jawline, straight posture, no hint of sleep deprivation under the eyes. He looked like someone you'd trust without question, and that terrified me more than the attic thing, the messages, the mirror man, or even Clara's vacant smile. Clara stood behind him now, gently adjusting his collar like she used to do to mine when we were late for dinner reservations, like muscle memory, like ritual. And he let her, just stood there, polished and silent, as if I'd already been replaced and he was just waiting for me to admit it. "I'm not leaving," I said. "Not until you tell me what this all is." Clara stepped around him, toward me. For the first time since all this began, I saw it. Remorse. Real. Raw. She looked like someone who wanted to say sorry but didn't have permission. She handed me something small and warm. At first I thought it was a key, but no. It was a stone. A flat black stone with a perfect fingerprint-shaped dent in the middle. "They never expected you to resist this long," she said, her voice cracking. "They watch people fall apart every day. Most of them don't even ask questions. They just surrender. You didn't." "What is this place?" I asked. "It's not a place," she said. "It's a filter, a test, for stories. They pull people in to see which ones are worth keeping. They rearranged your life to test how much of it was real and how much you'd protect. The fake me, whatever he was, stepped back into the shadows. Not in defeat, but in acknowledgement. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. I clenched the stone. There was a low vibration under my feet, like the entire house was taking a breath. The screens flickered, the piano stopped. The hallway photos began to fade, one by one, and for the first time in what felt like years, I felt light. Not happy, not safe, but lighter, like something had been pressing on my chest this whole time and finally let go. Clara smiled, not the cryptic haunting smile I'd seen before, but the old one, the one from when we first moved in. She touched my cheek. "I wasn't allowed to tell you," she whispered, "but you found your way anyway. That means something." Then everything went white, not violently, not even suddenly. Just like the moment you open your eyes in the morning and realize it's already daylight. A soft fade, a warm one. I woke up on the porch. My tea was still warm. The trash bin was still open, and Clara was inside, singing, badly, off-key, like she always did when she thought I wasn't listening. I walked into the kitchen. The second mug was gone. No mirror man, no camera, no static, just sunlight through the window and the smell of real coffee. Real life. Mr. fiddles me out and wrapped around my ankle. The microwave door showed my reflection again. And this time, I was smiling. Because whatever that place was, whatever they were, they let me go. Because I fought. Because I stayed. And because in the end, even if I didn't understand everything, I remembered who I was. And no one else got to rewrite that.